All right, we're going to do a barn quilt today. So today I have, you can just use any piece of wood that you have around your house. You can make them as large or as small as you'd like. This one's about a 10 by 10 square. It's a pre-made pallet that I got, I don't know, some craft store someplace. It's just a cheap one. I think it's probably actually like a pine or a balsa wood. It's really, really thin. But I'm not going to use it for anything else. It's a little too light to wood burn. I just think it's going to burn too much. So I'm going to use it to make my barn quilt. I don't really like that it's all one solid color. I want my barn quilt to look a little vintage, a little old. So I'm going to go ahead and sand some of it off. You could do a whitewash on something that you have and then kind of sand a little bit off that way to get the vintage look too. So you don't have to do what I'm doing to make yours. This is just, the process that I'm going to use for mine. So I'm going to go ahead and sand it first, and then we'll talk about the design. So I just have 100 grit sandpaper. You can use any sandpaper that you have. The higher grit numbers are going to be more of a fine sandpaper, so it's not going to sand quite as harshly. The lower numbers are going to be a really hard granule sand, so it's going to take off a lot more, and it might actually gouge the wood depending on what kind of wood you have. So this just happens to be a kind that I have in the basement. It's just 100 grit. There's something else. I have some divots on here already from just it sitting around my house for probably, I don't even know, 2 years maybe. So I actually don't mind that. Some of it's going to get covered up, but like this one here, you'll be able to see. I think some of this will be covered up too, but I kind of like that the knots are there. So once you do your design, you can decide which way you want to put it. I have a hanger on mine, so this is actually just going to be the top of mine. But I'm going to go ahead and sand, and then we'll decide about the design in order. So I'm just going to sand enough so that I get some of that lighter look to it, and I'm going to go with the grain. If you don't have to, but that's how I'm going to do it. Okay, so this is the way it turned out. So anything that's raised or anything that has like a higher section on it is going to be worn down more so than anything that's lower. So this middle section is up a little bit higher. This one plank is really high. So I put a little bit more of a wear there, and on the side where it's a little bit higher there, and then of course in the corners. I didn't do it exactly the same on each side. So like this one here is a little bit darker. So it gives it more of a rustic than sitting in your garage or whatever kind of a look for a while. I did go outside and I did blow all the dust off it. You can use a very, very lightly damp rag as well to make sure you get all the dust off. It's up to you what you want to do. Feels pretty good. So I'm going to move my sandpaper. And now I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my design. So I'm going to do mine in three. There's 3 rows of 3, so nine tiles. And mine's, of course, 10 inches long. It's not a nice even, it's not a nice even number. That's divisible by 3. So mine's going to be like 3 inches and a third, or roughly a third. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. You can certainly do a printout, and then you can trace it that way. It's up to you how you want to do it. I'm just going to mark, I'm just going to eyeball it. All right, I know you can't. Again, I know you can't see it, but I have my my 3 rows of 3, so my 9 tiles or my 9 squares. You can do any design that you want at this point. This is, this is just the one that I picked. It's a little bit easier. It's not anything too crazy. Well, mine has diamonds in here and here and here, and then there's a checkerboard pattern in the middle. So once we start painting, you'll be able to see it a little bit better. But I'm just going to go ahead and mark off my tiles now. Alright, so now I have everything marked off. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start painting. There's different ways that you can do it. If your design is really complicated or you're not very good at getting straight lines, you can use masking tape, and you can actually tape off your sections so that you don't get anything anywhere, or painter's tape, so you don't get paint beyond this line. I'm not going to worry about it because I kind of like the, messier type of look, so it's up to you what you want to do. I have different colors here. I'm going to use a navy blue, an orange, and a green and a purple. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to put them yet, but those are the 4 colors that I'm going to use. And then I have my paint palette and my brush. And I do actually have 2 other brushes for small details. This is a flat tip brush, it's just really tiny, and then a round brush in case there's some little crevice that I want to get into, or something like that. So I have these on hand just in case I need them. So I have my design. I'm going to work up in this first quadrant so that I'm kind of working away from myself. Makes it a little bit easier. So if you're right-handed, you're going to want to work left, top left to bottom right so that you're not putting your hand in the wet paint. And when you open your paint bottles, make sure that you do it over the palette and not over your design, because I've actually had it where there's maybe an air bubble caught in here and it will go right onto your design here, so you don't want that. I'm actually going to use this smaller one, I think. I have a pretty steady hand when it comes to straight lines and paint, but if you don't, or if the thing that you're doing you want to be very specific, then you can certainly just use the tape or find some kind of a straight edge that you can hold there to guide your paintbrush. I'm not going to go over the edge, I just want to paint the top. These are just standard craft paints. They're just standard like acrylic craft paints. If you're going to use this outside, they do actually have outdoor paints. They're made to be, but they're a little bit more UV resistant. So if you are going to be hanging yours outside, you certainly need to look for some kind of an outdoor exterior paint. So I'm painting with the grain here. I did my outline, obviously, kind of diagonal on it because that's how I need it to be, but the rest of it I'm going to be doing with the grain. So it's going to be kind of odd how you paint it a little bit, but you want to try and get the paint. If you go against the grain, sometimes you can get some gobs, is what I mean to say. Okay, so now I'm going to do these two side ones, and instead of having my pattern go top to bottom, I'm going to turn it, so I'm going to do these two here, and then these two here on these, so that they're going the other direction. So I'm going to use the purple for my outside colors. Just give it a little shake here. When you get new paints, sometimes this label can take up quite a bit of the actual color of the paint, and this is way darker. I don't know if you can tell. The label is way darker than what it is. They try to get it to be a similar color, but it's not always. So if you look at the very bottom of the paint container, it shows you what color you're using here. It's a little bit better indicator when you're going to purchase. Okay, so now I'm going to paint my two inside pieces. I'm going to use the orange and the green for that, and I'm going to do a checkerboard pattern. So these two will be green, and these two will be orange. See, that's what I mean. See that little bubble that just came up? I just avoided a near catastrophe there. You see how thin this one is? It doesn't cover very well at all. This one I might need to do 2 coats for sure. The purple actually looks pretty good, but this one looks very, very, very light. Who knows though, if the orange is equally as light, I might leave it. It looks kind of old and worn out, so maybe it will work. I'm going to go back and I'm going to start painting the other two colors again. I just don't like how it looks. You can see a lot of the brush strokes in there. So I'm going to go ahead with another coat on that one. So I'm actually going to paint these two. I broke off this corner into another quad here. So I'm going to do this one and this one orange and this one and this one orange. I just think it looks a little strange because I actually realized that I did these two, these outside pieces the wrong direction. So I should have painted them the other way. So we're going to solve that and work on a different type of design or a different way of doing it. Okay, so everything is dry. I've put my little corners on, my little squares in the corners. I think it looks pretty good, but I'm going to go ahead and just sand some of these edges. I don't really like how crisp they are. So I just have my same sandpaper before. I'm not going to sand the entire thing, but if you wanted to, I'd recommend that you use a really a higher grit sandpaper so you don't take off quite as much paint. But it's up to you how you want to do it. So I'm just going to do a little bit on the edges, maybe get a little bit more wear and tear in here. I think these actually look pretty good because they're kind of see-through, but there's some heavier sections here that I want to kind of just sand that off. I don't want it to look like it's freshly painted. So that's my objective. It's not to erase the whole thing or wear the whole thing down. It's just to make it look like it's not freshly painted. So that's what I'm going to go for here. We'll see how it goes. When you do sand it, it does change the color a little bit, so be aware of that. I'm not going to touch any of my blue or my purple. I don't want those to change at all. So. So I'm going to take a little bit of a damp towel here and just see if I can get that dust. This looks like it's just some dust on there. If I can't get that to come off with the paper towel, I would just go over with a little bit of paint and just sort of touch that part of it up. So if there's any sections that you might have accidentally scratched on the ones you didn't want to do, just touch it with a little bit of paint and it should take care of that. So I'm going to hang this in my house. Remember, if you're going to put this outside, you're going to want to seal it with some kind of a UV protective type of spray. I believe Thompson's has a UV resistant type of sealer or coat on it. Make sure you do the entire thing, obviously. And then make sure you use the UV paints, the ones that can go outside. Like if you look for one that usually has a birdhouse or a wine glass on the outside, those are ones that they're enamel paints, and those are ones that you can use outside or for things that you're going to put outside. So there you go. I hope that you enjoyed this craft today, and we'll see you again next time.